an incredible year for concerts in Pittsburgh. But we begin from Charleston, South Carolina, of course, that horrible news, the shootings there, and you hear terrorism all over the world, from literally Europe to the South Pacific to the Asian continent to right here in our own backyard. It's something that doesn't stop, and it's also the summer of travel, 2015. People are out and about and traveling worldwide. So how do you stay safe, especially when you have, well, a lot at stake, like your family? And there's no one that knows it better than this man here, Impacts Academy. Of course, find him on Facebook or go to my Facebook page or their Twitter post. They're there on my Twitter post right now as we speak. On the Disc Institute of Pittsburgh Newsline, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome back, after a very long absence, and he's back with us right now, Sam Rosenberg. Good evening, Sam.
Good evening, Rob. Thanks for having me again.
It's great to have you here. Listen, let's kind of start off with what happened in Charleston and just a tragedy there. But as great as you are, and you are good at what you do, I don't see how you could have much of a chance in a situation like that. So is it a fair statement to say that there are some situations that truly are out of your hands?
I don't believe that, Rob. I actually fundamentally think that one of the key dynamics that we always try to address in our trainings are two key myths. And what those two key myths are the myth of randomness and the myth of helplessness. Speaking specifically to the question that you bring up, I don't think you're fundamentally helpless anytime. I think that you always have something that you can do to positively impact that situation. And this is not to in any way, shape, or form belittle the situation or to belittle any situation where people have found themselves, for all intents and purposes, helpless in a scenario. What we're talking about here is the simple fact that when we address the dimension, if you will, of physical violence, what most people fail to understand is that we really do not rise to the occasion. We fall to the level of our training. And the idea here is that without understanding what effectively makes us helpless, namely a lack of information, a lack of preparedness, and when we get faced with that critical violence, that critical stress, the fact that our brain is most likely to simply go into paralysis and shut down. When we don't know that is in fact probably likely, and how do we combat it, then helplessness is a real factor. But once we understand the dynamics at play, and we understand how to prepare ourselves in such a way that we can take immediate and decisive action, then we really are never helpless. We may be in bad situations, we may be in the wrong place at the wrong time, but fundamentally, we always have something that we can do to positively affect that dynamic.
Sam Rosenberg, my guest, Impacts. It's IMPAX. If you want to find out more, go to my Facebook page or his or their Twitter post. Truly an amazing organization, and in my opinion, one of the best at teaching you how to take care of yourself. Sam, let me ask you, okay, you made that very clear that you always have a chance, but in some cases, if you're with your children, your wife or husband, and it's either take the bullet or they take the bullet, do you tell people that sometimes sacrifice is maybe the best route to take? And when does that become evident, or is that a split-second decision?
I mean, obviously, there are going to be situations where you're going to put yourself in harm's way to save someone else. Ask any mother. If I said, look, there's only one person standing between that bad guy with that gun or that weapon of any kind and your family, is there anything on earth that would stop you from getting to that guy? They'll tell you there's nothing. And I truly believe that. And when you look at the physiology of, our bodies, the human body is an amazing engine. It's an engine that can take enormous damage and continue to go, especially under adrenaline when we have effects like vasoconstriction, doing everything that it can physiologically to make sure that we don't pass out and lose consciousness due to hypovolemic shock, due to loss of blood. When we have these effects, it's incredibly difficult to stop someone who's extremely motivated. But at the same time, if you know how to stop someone, if you know how to shut them down, you can actually do it fairly decisively despite that fact. So the idea here is that not everyone is going to be a ninja. Not everybody's going to be super well trained. But my personal argument, my personal belief is that everyone has a chance. Let me give you a real statistic here. According to an FBI study, 2002 to 2012 of active shooting scenarios in our society, so this is not just schools or workplaces, it's at churches, it's at malls, etc. We already know that the vast majority of the time, law enforcement is not going to be involved to stop the shooter, most of the time. Most of the time, the bad guy is either going to stop himself by committing suicide, or he's going to give up and move on because there's no targets left. The idea, though, is that at least a third of the time, statistically speaking, ordinary people are getting the job done and tackling and taking down that bad guy, whether they shoot him, whether they tackle him, whatever it takes. Look at Franklin Regional last year. We had a mass stabbing that's now again in the news because the trial is going on. The person who stopped that incident was a vice principal who ran and tackled the stabber. So it wasn't the armed school resource officer who was there with the training and the body armor and the equipment to do something about it decisively. It was an ordinary citizen. And what we find most of the time, Rob, is that no matter what the crisis is, it's ordinary people, guys like you and me, who are, in fact, responding to the crisis and effectively taking care of business before the professional lifeguards get there.
Let me jump.
That's why, to me, it's so critical that you learn how to swim.
All right, let me jump in here real quick and take a break. We'll come back. It's INPAX, INPAX, Sam Rosenberg, my guest. To get to still to come on Rob Pratte Monday night, but interesting conversation now with Sam Rosenberg from INPAX, INPAX. He's a self-defense expert, and that's the INPAX Academy. Facebook him. You can find him on Twitter or Facebook, or go directly to either one of my posts right now and find out what he can do for your family. So is it gotten to the point where just about everywhere we go, we have to be aware that danger is lurking? Is our world that we live in that bad, Sam?
I think it is to some degree, Rob. I don't believe in unwarranted fear. I don't think that people should live their lives in fear. In fact, the opposite. You know, our motto is to live with confidence. The key, though, is that we have to understand that the world can be a dangerous place, but that doesn't mean that things are entirely random and that violence occurs out of the blue. A lot of times there's warning indicators, and a lot of times there's a lot of things that you can do to prevent violent acts and danger from really occurring. In fact, recognizing early warning signs of danger is really a critical step and really a hallmark of what we teach. So, you know, a very simple way to understand this and to teach yourself situational awareness, just to give you a tool that people can walk away with, is that when you look at every environment out there, whether it's the hallway in a mall or a parking lot or a city street or what have you, every environment has a very distinct purpose. And if you scan that environment and you get in the habit of scanning your environment, you can see very, very quickly when someone is not using that environment for its designated purpose. Someone's lurking around a parking lot. They may very well be waiting for a ride, but that gives very distinct body language. And if you see someone who is actively not engaged in that behavior appropriately, they're effectively watching, you can see that fundamentally you're watching for the watchers. And it makes it very, very easy, relatively speaking, to get in the habit of situational awareness to spot danger in advance. Most of the time, if you simply spot it, it's not going to manifest in your direction because bad guys are looking for easy targets. They're not looking for difficult targets and ones that can really pose a challenge to them.
When we talk about violence in America today, are we talking crime? Are we talking terrorism, random acts of violence? What are we talking about, or is it all of the above, Sam?
It's all of the above. I mean, the day-to-day concerns that most people have are for, street crime. Muggings, rapes, assaults, home invasions, those kinds of things. But relatively speaking, those things can be a little bit, they can be a little bit off the beaten track for most people. They don't think about it on a regular basis. But it's something that getting in the habit of good situational awareness skills and good awareness training in general is very, very important because especially in today's day and age with digital technology, with everybody wants to be plugged into their cell phones, listening to music, texting and everything else, what we're really doing is we're shunting our awareness and our ability to recognize signs of danger. And the critical step there is if you can recognize the danger in advance and simply get off the X, as we say, get off the moment of incident before it ever happens, you're never really in danger, whether that's from a street crime incident or whether it's an active shooting.
Do you think the majority of people are still naive to the violence that really lurks, even though they hear the news, they see the news, they read the paper, social media? Do you still think the average person in Main Street America just is too blind or shuts their ears and their senses off when it comes to actually knowing what's happening in the world around them, Sam?
Rob, that's an awesome question. I got to tell you, it's one I give a lot of thought to because I don't think that many people are really that naive anymore. I really do think that people understand what's going on around them and that there is danger and danger could manifest into your reality. The thing is, though, that most people have no idea what to do about it. So the natural psychological impact there, the natural result, is if you look at a subject that is scary, you say, I just don't know what I'm going to do in that event, then you go into a denial state that says, I'm just going to hope and pray that it never happens, or it's never going to happen to me. Or we start to rationalize by saying things like, I live in a good neighborhood, I don't go downtown, I don't do things, and foolish notions that only bad things happen downtown or in certain places. So the idea here is it's not really naive as much as it is a denial mechanism. And the denial really, I think, is the biggest problem because it's truly a save now, pay later scheme. It makes you feel better in the moment. You kind of can ignore the problems. But what happens is the moment you get into a situation, you become one of those people who literally shuts down in paralysis and has no capacity to physically or psychologically cope with the reality of what's happening.
Sam, listen, in the final minute, tell folks about what you do.
Thank you, Rob. Impact's Academy of Personal Protection is a unique organization. We're in the business of protecting people and organizations and teaching them how to protect themselves. Our whole motto is to live with confidence, and that fundamentally, it's good to have a lifeguard, but it's better to know how to swim. We want to teach people how to manage violence, how to understand the early warning indicators, how to get away from trouble when they see it early on, and if they can't escape it, how to deal with it, no matter what the scenario is, here domestically or abroad, in the workplace, in a school, or in your own home.
Sam, it's always an honor to have you on the program. Next time, do it in studio so we can maybe take some calls and spend a little more time together, okay?
You bet, Rob. Thank you again. Have a great night.
Great patriot and truly a man that knows what he speaks of. And, there are just those people that have laser focus, and he is one of them. When you're in the room with him, you feel his confidence, but more importantly, you understand his message of how he's trying to give you that same confidence and, more importantly, keep you and your family safe. An amazing man and a dear friend. That's the great Sam Rosenberg, Impact's Academy, INPAX. You can find him on Facebook and Twitter and also on my post as well.